On wedding night, pregnant wife discovers her billionaire husband's affair with mistress walks away. On the most magical night of her life, Adele Carter believed she had finally stepped into her fairy tale, a grand wedding, a dashing billionaire husband, and the sweet promise of a life happily ever after. Little did she know, her dreams were on the verge of unraveling in a single shattering moment. As she carried their unborn child, her heart brimmed with hopeful anticipation. But a shocking discovery on the very night of her nuptials changed everything. Love, betrayal, and deep heartbreak collided behind the closed doors of an opulent mansion. The question remained, would she survive this betrayal or lose herself entirely? Adele Carter had always dreamed of a wedding fit for a princess. From the time she was a little girl, spinning in front of the mirror in her mother's bedroom with a pillowcase draped over her head for a veil, she had pictured a day filled with radiant smiles, elegant music, and dazzling lights. She had envisioned white roses adorning every surface, candles flickering in crystal holders, and her father walking her down a long aisle as the people she loved most watched her take the most important steps of her life. That dream, in many ways, was exactly what came to pass. The wedding took place in the prestigious Redwood estate in Northern California, home to sprawling gardens, ancient redwood trees, and a century-old manor that had been transformed into a five-star venue. Her fiancé, Daniel Harrison, spared no expense. He was the billionaire heir to the Harrison real estate empire, famed for his successful investments in luxury properties around the world. Daniel had always told Adele that if she was going to be his wife, he wanted to show her a life where her every dream could materialize at the snap of a finger. And that was precisely what he delivered that sunny afternoon. The ceremony site was a marvel of floral artistry, a cascade of ivory peonies, white lilies, and sweet, scented roses lined the aisle. An archway of fairy lights sparkled overhead, and a subtle harp melody drifted in the gentle breeze. Adele's father, Robert Carter, walked her slowly down the aisle, tears pooling at the corners of his eyes. All around them, guests sniffled behind discreetly held handkerchiefs. Daniel waited at the altar, his posture upright and confident. He wore a bespoke tuxedo, impeccably tailored to his lean, athletic frame. His dark hair caught the sunlight, gleaming with perfect style. When his gaze locked with Adele's, a soft smile spread across his face. Her heart fluttered, and for a moment it felt as though no one else existed in the world but the two of them. In the front row, Adele's mother, Harriet Carter, dabbed at her teary eyes, smiling proudly at her daughter. On the groom's side, Daniel's mother, Esther Harrison, maintained a dignified air, though one could see the pride shining in her eyes. Next to her sat his father, Jonathan Harrison, who cast a stoic but approving nod as his son prepared to exchange vows. Adele's ivory gown had been custom designed by a close friend of the family, a famous couturier who had dressed some of Hollywood's biggest stars. Delicate lace wove intricate patterns across her bodice, and a train extended behind her like a rippling ocean of white silk. Few people knew she was already several weeks pregnant, her tiny bump concealed by the clever cut of her dress. Despite their initial plan to wait, the pregnancy hadn't been an unwelcome surprise. Adele had envisioned it as a beautiful beginning to their new life, and Daniel, he had sworn he was thrilled about the child. As she approached, the efficient Father Benjamin Smith, a longtime friend of her parents, smiled kindly. The hush over the gathering was profound. Even the birds in the nearby trees seemed to pause in reverence. When Adele reached Daniel, he took her hands in his. She felt the warmth of his fingers, and for a fleeting second, remembered the day she'd first realized she loved him. It was the day he'd unexpectedly shown up at her modest apartment in Seattle, years ago, arms loaded with groceries, determined to cook her a birthday dinner. He had burned nearly everything. They had laughed until their sides ached, and she'd known in that moment that she was in love. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Father Benjamin's voice echoed, launching into the formalities, calling upon everyone to witness the union between Adele Carter and Daniel Harrison. Adele glanced around, taking in the golden sunshine, the glimmer of crystal chandeliers, the hush of whispered excitement. She felt like she was living in a daydream. But in the hush, she failed to notice the sidelong glances from a woman dressed in a pale blue gown seated near the back, or how the edges of Daniel's smile seemed faintly strained. If only she'd caught those signs earlier. Perhaps she could have steeled her heart for what was to come. The vows were exchanged in heartfelt speeches that left everyone either teary-eyed or smiling from ear to ear. Daniel's voice carried over the crowd, both gentle and firm, as he pledged his loyalty and undying love to Adele. "I vow to protect you, to honor you, and to build a family with you, a family that will stand as a testament to the love we share," he said. Squeezing her hands, Adele's heart soared. When Adele spoke her vows, her voice trembled. She promised to love Daniel through every storm and sunshine life brought their way, to walk hand in hand beside him, and to nurture the seed of their love that was already blossoming inside her body. She felt a faint movement, perhaps her imagination, or a flutter from the little life she carried. It felt like affirmation, as though the child she bore was pledging loyalty too. A thunderous applause followed. They exchanged rings. They sealed their union with a tender kiss. Cameras flashed from every angle, capturing the moment that would later grace tabloid covers. The heir to the Harrison fortune had married the beautiful yet humble Adele Carter, a Cinderella story for the modern age. So the gossip columns would proclaim. After the ceremony, guests were led into a lavishly decorated ballroom for the reception. Towering floral arrangements adorned each table, while a string quartet in the corner set a romantic ambience. Waiters glided across the floor, serving gourmet dishes selected by Daniel and Adele weeks prior. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead like captured starlight. In one corner, a group of Daniel's business associates offered toasts, praising his leadership and sharp mind. They teased him about losing his bachelor freedom, but Adele noticed how they always followed up with a smile toward her, acknowledging that Daniel was truly a lucky man. Between dances, Adele's best friend, Simone Hill, pulled her aside to gush about how utterly perfect the wedding was. "Adele, this is everything we dreamed of in college, isn't it? You're glowing, and that dress, absolutely stunning. Everyone's talking about how you and Daniel look like a couple from a royal wedding." Adele laughed softly, though she felt a spike of nausea that had nothing to do with the conversation. Her pregnancy was still delicate, and she was cautious about letting it show. She excused herself to find a moment alone, stepping away from the swirling crowd. That was when she first saw the woman in blue from the ceremony, standing near a tall glass window that opened onto the garden. Their eyes met for a second, and Adele noticed how the woman averted her gaze, as though she had been caught lurking. Adele didn't think much of it. There were so many guests she didn't know personally. She assumed it was just another business contact of Daniel's, or perhaps someone's plus one. Yet the encounter left her feeling off-kilter, like she had glimpsed a hidden agenda in those eyes. She let the thoughts slip away, focusing instead on the rush of happiness and the knowledge that this was supposed to be the best day of her life. She had to ignore any twinge of unease. After all, who in their right mind would dwell on ominous strangers at their wedding reception? Later that night, as the dancing slowed and the older guests began to retire, the younger crowd moved the celebration outdoors. Twinkling lights hung between the towering trees, a DJ replaced the quartet, and a light breeze made the summer evening especially enchanting. Adele and Daniel moved from group to group, mingling with guests who still lingered, congratulating them and snapping pictures. At one point, Daniel was pulled aside by Morgan Adams, the wedding planner Adele had personally chosen for his impeccable track record. Morgan was discussing some last-minute detail about the honeymoon arrangements. Adele found herself alone by a tall garden fountain, the gentle sound of water splashing providing a welcome respite from the noise of celebration. Just as she was about to slip inside to change into her after-party dress, she saw that woman in blue again. The woman stood across the lawn, partially hidden behind the trunk of a broad redwood tree. This time, their eyes locked for longer than a second. Adele felt a cold, unsettling feeling creep into her stomach. Something about the woman's expression seemed both sorrowful and triumphant. Before Adele could cross the lawn to ask who she was, Daniel returned. He was flushed from the dancing, his tie loosened around his neck. "Hey," he said, wrapping an arm around her. He pressed a quick kiss to her temple, then noticed her frown. "Is everything all right?" She opened her mouth to speak, but for some reason she hesitated. She glanced back at the tree, but the woman was gone. "I'm fine," she said softly. I suppose it's been a long day. I'm tired." He smiled. "It has been," he admitted. "Let's say our final goodbyes and slip away." They returned to the heart of the reception, where they were cheered by rowdy groomsmen and giggling bridesmaids. The final hour of the wedding passed in a flurry of laughter, speeches, and tearful farewells. Adele tried her best to ignore the nagging unease. Then came the send-off, a shower of rose petals as Adele and Daniel made their exit. The driver, an older gentleman named Thomas, escorted them to a vintage Rolls-Royce that had been decorated with a "Just Married" sign and tin cans rattling behind the rear bumper. They waved at everyone until the manor's silhouette disappeared behind them. When Adele finally leaned back against the seat, she thought that perhaps the twinge of disquiet had been nothing more than wedding day nerves. Their first night together as husband and wife was to be spent at one of the Harrison family's most exclusive properties, a private seaside villa perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Daniel had surprised her with this location. "It's just for tonight," he had said. "Tomorrow, we'll take the jet to our real honeymoon destination in the Maldives. But for now, I want to watch the sun rise over the ocean with my wife." The villa was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the vast ocean like a living painting. White, gauzy curtains billowed in the salty breeze, and outside waves crashed against the rugged cliffs. Adele felt her heart melt at the romantic setting. Even a mild wave of nausea from her pregnancy couldn't dampen her awe. After Thomas dropped them off with a discreet tip of his hat, Daniel led her inside. They explored the villa hand in hand, discovering cozy fireplaces and plush sofas. Adele noticed a large gift basket filled with chocolates, champagne, and fresh strawberries in the kitchen, a wedding gift from Daniel's mother, Esther. Adele stepped out onto the balcony, letting the cool night air brush over her face. The reflection of the moonlight on the water shimmered like 1,000 diamonds. She closed her eyes, placing a hand over her stomach. "How perfect is this moment?" she thought. "I can't believe I'm so lucky." Daniel joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. For a moment, they stood in silence, letting the steady crash of waves speak for them. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we'll be on a plane, heading for the Maldives. No business calls, no interruptions, just you, me, and paradise." She turned her face to his. "I can't wait," she breathed, tiptoeing to press her lips softly to his. They retreated inside, laughter echoing in the grand hallway as Daniel scooped her into his arms, carrying her toward the luxurious bedroom. The bed was scattered with rose petals, the entire room lit by the gentle glow of candles. Everything felt as it should, magical, passionate, and new. But once again, a small knot formed in Adele's stomach. She recalled the woman in blue. Who was she? Why had she seemed so intent on watching? For a fleeting moment, Adele wondered if she should bring it up to Daniel. Maybe he knew her. Perhaps she was an ex who had come to the wedding hoping to sabotage the day. But as Adele locked her gaze on Daniel's eager eyes, she decided to keep the peace. Tonight should be about them, not old fears or shadowy strangers. Adele let the question slip away as they sank into each other's arms, the outside world melting into the background. Late into the night, when Adele drifted into a gentle sleep curled against Daniel's chest, she felt safe. A slight breeze from the open balcony door kept the room from feeling stuffy, and the moonlight played across the floor in silver patches. Suddenly, the shrill ring of Daniel's phone sliced through the hush, startling her awake. Daniel groaned, fumbling around the bedside table until he found his phone. Adele was half asleep, her eyes barely open, but she caught a glimpse of the screen's glowing light. The name on the caller ID read, "Christine. Who is it?" she murmured. "Just a business associate," Daniel replied hastily, pressing the phone to his ear as he slid out of bed. She watched, her vision a little blurry as he disappeared onto the balcony. Her heart pounded more from the sudden interruption than from suspicion, but a moment later, she couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. A business associate calling at nearly 2 in the morning? She tried to reassure herself. He was a billionaire with projects scattered across the globe. Perhaps some important deal in another time zone demanded his attention. It wasn't that strange, right? Yet the memory of that woman in blue crept back. Adele propped herself up on her elbows, straining her ears to listen. She could faintly hear Daniel's voice, low and urgent. It wasn't an argument exactly, but there was a tension in his tone that she'd never heard before. She swallowed. Her throat felt dry. She flipped on the small lamp by the bed, glancing around the empty room. A swirl of rose petals on the floor reminded her that this was supposed to be their wedding night. Why was he talking business now? After what felt like an eternity, Daniel returned, face set in a tight expression. He tried to force a smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Work emergency?" she asked softly. He nodded, sitting on the bed's edge. "Yes. A new development project in London is facing some issues. Investors are, well, let's just say they're restless." Adele studied him. She wanted to believe him. She truly did. He was her husband, now the father of her unborn child. But something in his posture felt off. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Can it wait until the morning? We're leaving tomorrow for our honeymoon." He took a moment to respond, still staring at his phone as though it might ring again at any moment. "Yeah," he finally said, forcing another smile. "I'll handle it in the morning, don't worry." Adele tried to accept it. She lay back down, allowing him to spoon around her. But as she drifted off, she couldn't escape the nagging sense that their perfect day was stained by something lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. By the time morning light filtered into the villa, Adele woke alone. She rubbed her eyes and saw that Daniel had already risen. The balcony doors were open, letting in the scent of sea salt. The clock on the nightstand read 8:12 am. They were set to leave for the airport at noon. She found Daniel in the living room, pacing back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. He was half dressed in a shirt and trousers, hair still damp from a quick shower. "Yes, Christine, the first understand," she heard him say, though his tone was hushed. "But we agreed this would stay out of the public eye." Adele froze in the hallway. Christine, the same name from last night. Now her suspicion began to swirl, thick and suffocating. She felt her heart hammering, and an uncomfortable heat crept into her cheeks. Daniel turned, noticing Adele. He quickly ended the call. "Hey," he said, forcing a too casual grin. "You're up." "Good morning, Mrs. Harrison." He spread his arms as if expecting a warm embrace, but Adele didn't move. She caught his eyes with a steady gaze. "Daniel, who is Christine?" He shrugged, the gesture stilted. She's an important associate. She's heavily involved in some of my European investments. And she needs to speak with you at odd hours, right after our wedding." He tried a quick laugh, but it sounded hollow. "Time zones, deals falling through. It's complicated. I'm sorry if it bothered you. You know how demanding this business can be." His eyes darted toward the phone in his hand, betraying a flicker of anxiety. Adele pressed her lips together. She wanted to trust him. She inhaled a slow breath, reminding herself that they were newly married. Maybe she was just being paranoid. "All right," she said finally, trying to sound casual. "Let me shower and pack." A pang of disappointment struck her. She'd hoped for a romantic morning, breakfast by the cliffs, maybe dancing barefoot on the balcony. Instead, it was overshadowed by cryptic phone calls and a name that, for some reason, made her stomach churn. She turned to walk back to the bedroom, fighting the urge to peek at his phone and confirm her suspicions. Back in the bedroom, Adele took her time getting ready. She stood under the warm shower spray, letting the water trickle across her face. She placed a hand on her belly. "We're okay," she whispered, as if speaking to her unborn child. "Mommy's just a little worried, but everything's going to be fine." After dressing in a light sundress, she started to gather her items for the trip. But her mind kept drifting back to Daniel's tense conversation. She almost jumped when she heard a knock on the door. "May I come in?" Daniel asked quietly from the other side. She opened the door, stepping aside. He looked subdued. "I'm sorry," he said, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "I know it's not ideal dealing with business stuff on our wedding night." Adele let out a slow sigh. "I know your business is important to you, Daniel. It's a strange start to our married life." His features softened. "Once we're in the Maldives, I promise all of my focus will be on you and our baby. No more calls, no more late-night emergencies." He leaned in and kissed her cheek. "You're my priority." She closed her eyes briefly, letting herself accept his words. She needed to trust him. It was the vow she had made at the altar, to believe in him and stand by him, for better or worse. "Okay," she murmured. They finished packing and headed for the airport in a sleek black limousine. The entire drive, Daniel seemed preoccupied with his phone, though no calls came in. Adele gazed out the tinted windows at the passing scenery, half listening as Daniel murmured about flight schedules and first-class lounge arrangements. She wanted so badly to sink back into the excitement of their honeymoon, floating villas over turquoise water, candlelit dinners by the ocean, the bliss of newlywed life. But as they neared the airport, Daniel's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen, frowned, then reluctantly answered. "I'm sorry," he mouthed to Adele, pressing the phone to his ear. "Yes, Christine?" he said quietly, turning away. Adele's heart clenched. Over the next few moments she heard snippets of his low conversation. Words like scandal, manage, and urgent drifted across the limo's quiet interior. The more he listened, the paler he grew. When he ended the call, his knuckles were white. He turned to Adele with eyes full of tension. I have to make a stop. The flight to the Maldives will have to wait." "What?" "Daniel, what's going on?" He exhaled, trying to steady himself. "Christine discovered an imminent crisis with some of our biggest investors. They're threatening to pull out if I don't address things immediately. I can't lose them. It would sink one of my largest projects. I need to go to my office, put out this fire. I promise, it'll just be a few hours." Adele stared, conflicted. "You're cancelling our honeymoon flight on the day after our wedding." She tried not to sound too accusatory, but she couldn't hide her frustration. "I'm rescheduling, not cancelling," Daniel insisted. "We'll still go just a bit later." "I'm sorry, Adele. I can't ignore this. My father's already furious, and if we lose these investors—" She held up a hand to stop him. She understood, or at least she tried to. The Harrison empire didn't simply run itself, and Daniel carried the weight of countless obligations. "Fine. Let's just go to your office, deal with whatever crisis is happening, and get on the plane tonight." He nodded, relief evident in his eyes. "Thank you for understanding." The limo altered course, heading toward the Harrison Corporation headquarters, a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of San Francisco. As they pulled up, a pang of dread and disappointment jolted through Adele. She should be walking onto a private jet. Right now, cradling her new husband's arm in excitement for their tropical getaway. Instead, she found herself stepping into a corporate lobby, marble floors and hushed conversation greeting them. Daniel led Adele through the private elevator to the top floor. The air smelled faintly of expensive cologne and polished wood. Modern art adorned the walls, while hushed assistants and top-level executives whisked about. "Stay in my office," Daniel said softly, guiding her toward a sleek door with his name etched on a brushed steel plaque. "I'll only be a few minutes. I have to meet Christine and the team in the conference room." She nodded, entering his expansive corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed a panoramic view of the bay. On one side sat a plush couch. On the other, an imposing desk with multiple monitors. The office radiated power and prestige. Adele settled herself on the couch, crossing her arms. Part of her wanted to go with Daniel, to see this Christine and form her own judgments. But she pushed the urge aside, not wanting to appear insecure. She had to trust him. That's what wives do, she reminded herself. Minutes ticked by. 5, 10, 15. She fidgeted, gazing at the cityscape. She considered calling her mother Harriet just to say hello, but she didn't want to admit she wasn't already on the plane. She'd promised to send a picture from the jet, excitement in her eyes. Then, as if summoned by the weight of her thoughts, the office door clicked open. A tall woman entered, wearing a fitted black pencil skirt and a crisp white blouse. Her dark hair was slicked back in a tight chignon, revealing a sharp, elegant face. She locked eyes with Adele. Adele's heart stuttered. She recognized that face from the wedding. "You," her voice faltered. "Were you at our wedding yesterday?" The woman's expression flickered, turning from surprise to something more composed. "I was." "I'm Christine Park," she said, extending a hand. Her voice was smooth, refined. "I work closely with Daniel on several international ventures." Adele hesitated. Something inside her recoiled at the thought of shaking this woman's hand, but she forced herself to maintain politeness and took it briefly. Christine's grip was cool, confident. "I see. Daniel told me you're a business associate." Christine's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Indeed. I apologize if I startled you at the wedding. I just needed to speak with Daniel about an urgent matter. I was invited to the ceremony by one of his associates." Small world, isn't it? Her gaze drifted to Adele's stomach for a split second, then returned to her face. "Congratulations, by the way." Adele's mind churned. Why had Daniel allowed this woman, who so clearly unsettled him, to come to their wedding? Unless her presence was unauthorized. 1,000 questions formed. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is the crisis resolved? We're supposed to be on our honeymoon." Christine's smile wavered. "Daniel's working on it now. Big deals come with big responsibilities, as you might imagine." The way she said it made Adele bristle, as though implying she might not understand the complexities of high-stakes business. "Right," Adele said, forcing a nod. She straightened her shoulders. "Well, I'm sure Daniel can handle anything that comes his way." Christine arched an eyebrow. For a moment, an unspoken tension hung between them. Adele found herself studying Christine's impeccable makeup, the faint smudge of lipstick that seemed slightly askew, and a subtle mark near her collar. Was it a bruise or a stray impression from something more personal? Before Adele could probe further, Daniel entered. He stopped short, glancing between the two women. His expression momentarily revealed alarm, but he quickly masked it. "Christine! The first told you I'd come find you. Why are you here?" "Just wanted to make sure everything was all right." Christine replied smoothly. I see your lovely wife was waiting alone, so I introduced myself. No harm done, I hope. Daniel's jaw tightened. We'll continue in the conference room. Adele, I'm sorry, but would you mind waiting here a bit longer? He gave a forced smile, gesturing for Christine to follow him out. Adele watched as Christine's eyes flicked over to Daniel, a look passing between them that made Adele's blood run cold. She couldn't quite read it: pity, triumph, or something else. Christine exited, and Daniel shut the door behind them. Alone again, Adele felt an explosive mixture of anger and fear. That woman's presence was no mere coincidence. Something deeper was happening, something that threatened the foundation of her new marriage. She stood, nerves jittering, and stepped toward Daniel's desk. She glanced at his phone lying there, the screen locked. For a moment, she considered rummaging through his emails, his documents, anything to find an explanation. But she felt a surge of guilt. Despite her anxiety, she couldn't bring herself to snoop. Instead, she paced back and forth, chewing on her lip. Time dragged. Finally, Daniel returned after almost an hour. He was visibly stressed. We need to push our flight back until tomorrow, he said quietly. Not meeting her eyes. Adele's heart dropped. Daniel, you promised we'd leave tonight. I know, but this is bigger than I expected. I need more time to secure these investors. It's not just my father's project. Thousands of jobs depend on this. If I don't salvage this, it'll be a PR disaster. Please, just one more day, Adele. She stared at him, tears threatening to rise. She tried to keep her voice steady. Are you sure it's just about the investors? He paused, his gaze finally lifting to hers. Something heavy and unreadable passed across his features. It is, he said after a moment. I promise. Just trust me. Against her better judgment, Adele nodded slowly. All right, Daniel. One more day. He pressed a quick kiss to her forehead. You won't regret this. I'll fix it, and then we'll leave for our dream honeymoon. Daniel arranged for them to spend the night at his penthouse in the city, a place Adele had visited a few times, though it always felt more like a cold, sophisticated showroom than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased an incredible view of the Golden Gate Bridge. The furniture was modern and minimalist, and everything from the curtains to the lighting was controlled by an integrated smart system. When they arrived, Daniel apologized again for the delay and promised to make dinner for them, a gesture he rarely offered. Given his busy schedule, Adele tried to appreciate the effort, but her appetite was overshadowed by worry. As he tinkered in the sleek kitchen, she wandered the living room restlessly, noticing the intangible sense of someone else's presence. A faint floral scent lingered on one of the pillows. She wondered if it was just from a room spray or if someone had been there recently. She sat on the sofa, flipping through channels on the large TV, but nothing held her interest. Eventually, Daniel came to her with a dish of pasta and a glass of sparkling water. She forced a small smile, taking the plate. "Thank you." He sat beside her, his gaze softer now that they were alone. "I'm really sorry, Adele. I know how excited you were for the Maldives." She let out a shaky breath. "I understand business is demanding. I hope it doesn't become a pattern, Daniel. Our relationship, our marriage has to come first, sometimes. Especially now, with the baby." He reached over, placing a gentle hand on her stomach. "I know, and I promise I won't let you down. After tomorrow, everything will be perfect." She nodded, wanting to believe him. They ate in silence for a while, the only sound the hum of traffic down below. Eventually, Daniel's phone buzzed again. He picked it up, eyeing the screen, and frowned. "Let me step out for a moment," he said quietly, already rising. Adele grabbed his wrist. "Who is it?" He hesitated. "It's Christine again." She felt tears sting her eyes. "Daniel, you can't keep running off to talk to her. This is our wedding night, part 2, I guess. I can't stand seeing you drop everything for her calls. His face twisted with guilt and frustration. I'm sorry, she's negotiating with the investors overseas. But I'm not running off. I'll be right here in the hallway. I swear I won't be long. Adele released his wrist, unable to stop him. She stared down at her barely touched dinner, appetite vanished, tears slipping down her cheeks in silence. Late that night, Adele awoke in the penthouse bedroom alone. The digital clock on the nightstand read 2:37 am. Daniel wasn't by her side. The space where he should have been felt cold. She slipped out of the bed, worried. The city lights glowed through the windows, giving the room an eerie ambience. Quietly, she padded into the hallway, calling his name in a hushed whisper. Daniel? No response. The penthouse was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. She checked the living room, the kitchen, and even the second bedroom, but he was nowhere to be found. Anxiety coiled in her stomach. She hurried to the foyer, thinking perhaps he left to pick up something or handle an emergency. That's when she noticed a sliver of light under the door of the home office. Adele crept closer, heart pounding. She heard muffled voices, Daniel's and a woman's. She recognized that smooth, measured tone instantly. Christine. But how could Christine be in the penthouse at nearly 3 a.m? I told you not to come here, Daniel was saying in a low, urgent voice. This is crazy. Adele is here. Adele's stomach flipped. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to not hear what might come next, but she was rooted to the spot. Ear pressed to the door. Daniel, Christine murmured, her tone dripping with intimacy. I had no choice. The investors want to pull out if we don't. Enough about the investors. Daniel hissed. We agreed that after the wedding, you'd keep your distance. Yet you keep answering my calls, Christine retorted with a bitter laugh. Don't pretend it's only about business. You know you can't stay away from me. You married her, but you still call me at night. Adele's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Tears blurred her vision, disbelief mingling with raw pain. She pressed closer, listening as her world shattered. Daniel's voice dropped. Stop it, he said, though not with the firm finality. Adele desperately wanted to hear. We made a mistake. I was weak. A mistake? Christine spat. Really? Because you said something different when you were in my bed last week, lamenting how you felt trapped by the whole wedding charade. You told me you'd rather be with me. Adele's lungs constricted. She felt like she might collapse. She wanted to burst in and scream at them, but her body refused to move, locked in a trembling freeze. Daniel sighed, resigned. That was before I realized I'd lose everything if I left Adele. My mother, father, they all threatened to cut me off if I didn't marry her. She's pregnant. For God's sake, did you expect me to just walk away from my own child? Christine's laugh was jagged. So you married her for the sake of your inheritance. How romantic. Meanwhile, I'm forced to watch you parade around in your lavish wedding while I'm just the business associate you keep behind closed doors. Christine, Daniel's voice sounded desperate. You knew what this was. We agreed to end things for now, at least publicly. If I lose my father's support, it's not just me at risk. Christine silenced him with a scornful scoff. Spare me the excuses. I gave you everything, Daniel. My time, my loyalty, my love. I believed we had a future. Adele's hand trembled on the doorknob. She felt fury coil in her chest at Daniel's betrayal, at Christine's audacity, but mostly she felt heartbreak heavy, suffocating heartbreak. Daniel spoke softly. I'm sorry. I do care for you, but everything is so complicated now. Christine's voice wavered between anger and sorrow. You can't keep me a secret forever, Daniel, especially if the child might be. He cut her off, voice sharp. Don't you dare mention that. It can't be. We were always careful. Adele's entire being went cold. Child? Christine might be pregnant too. She couldn't bear another word. Summoning a surge of adrenaline, she burst through the door. Both Daniel and Christine spun around, shock etched on their faces. Adele stood there, breath ragged, tears streaming freely. You lied to me," Adele choked out, her voice trembling with rage and sorrow. "You slept with her while I was carrying your child," Daniel gaped, stepping forward. "Adele, it's not what you think." Adele recoiled from his attempt to touch her. Her gaze flicked to Christine, who looked more triumphant than remorseful. She was leaning against Daniel's desk, arms crossed over her chest, but the flicker in her eyes revealed satisfaction at Adele's torment. "Is that why you were at our wedding?" Adele spat at Christine. "To watch your lover marry someone else?" Christine's lips pressed together, and she offered a careless shrug. "I had to make sure Daniel knew I wasn't going away quietly. Not when he's promised me so much." Adele's tears fell harder, fury surging. She turned to Daniel. "You used me. Was any of it real? The love, the vows, the child you swore you wanted?" Daniel's face twisted with regret. "Adele, it started before you got pregnant. I never meant for it to. I ended it, I swear. It's just, she's blackmailing me now." "The investors, she's got leverage on me," Christine laughed coldly. "You can't blame it all on me, Daniel. You enjoyed every moment we spent together." Adele glared at Daniel. "You said you loved me. You made me believe we had a future, that you wanted to build a family with me." Her voice cracked. "I gave up everything to be with you, my independence, my sense of security, trusting that you'd protect me and our baby." Daniel's face fell. "I do love you, Adele. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, just let me explain. We can fix this." Her shoulders shook with sobs, heartbreak overwhelming her. "Fix this?" "How can we fix this, Daniel? How can I ever look at you the same way?" Christine flicked a mocking glance between them. "Perhaps you two need some privacy," she sneered, heading for the door. As she passed Adele, she paused. "I'm not going anywhere, Mrs. Harrison. Your husband and I still have unfinished business." Adele's hand clenched into a fist, but she fought the impulse to lash out. She turned away, tears soaking her cheeks. Christine left, her heels clicking with a final note of triumph. Daniel started toward Adele, but she stepped back, eyes blazing. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't come near me." His hands trembled. "Adele, please. I'm sorry, it was a mistake. You have to believe me, she's been manipulating me." Adele let out a bitter laugh, tears streaming relentlessly. "So you're the victim now? Unbelievable." She pressed a hand to her stomach, the weight of her pregnancy hitting her like an avalanche. "I thought this was a real marriage, but you just needed me for your inheritance. Did you ever love me at all? Or was it always just about your empire?" Daniel's silence spoke volumes. Slowly he lowered his eyes. "I did love you," he whispered. "But I was scared of losing everything. My father threatened to disown me if I married anyone who wasn't suitable. When you got pregnant, it became the perfect solution. I could keep my inheritance and have a family. But then Christine," Adele's voice broke. "Stop. I don't want to hear another word." She took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. "You say you love me, but your actions prove otherwise." He reached out, and she slapped his hand away. "This is over," she hissed. "I'm leaving. I won't be part of your sick charade. I won't subject our child to this toxic mess." His eyes widened in panic. "You can't just go. We're married. We can work through it. I'll end things with Christine. I'll do whatever it takes." Adele shook her head, tears splattering onto the floor. "There's nothing left to save Daniel. You made your choice long before we said I do." And with that, she turned and walked out the door, leaving Daniel standing amid his shattered web of lies. Adele fled the penthouse with no plan but to escape. She ignored Daniel's calls echoing down the corridor, jabbing the elevator button repeatedly until the doors finally slid open. Once inside, she slumped against the wall, tears falling freely. Her mind spun with every horrible revelation, the affair, the possibility of another child, the betrayal. She pressed a trembling hand to her belly, her heart aching at the thought that her baby's father would never be the hero she hoped for. When the elevator reached the lobby, she swiped at her tears, trying to maintain composure. She marched through the marble foyer, ignoring the curious glances from late-shift employees. A doorman stepped forward, concerned. "Miss S. Harrison, can I call you a car?" She froze, heart twisting at the name, Miss S. Harrison. That dream had lasted less than a day. "Yes, please," she managed to say. She refused to linger there, in the realm of Daniel's power. A black town car arrived swiftly, and Adele slipped into the back seat. She gave the driver the address of a nearby luxury hotel, somewhere she could disappear for the night before deciding her next steps. She needed time to think, to cry, to plan. As the car glided through the sleeping city, she gazed out at the shimmering lights, the iconic silhouette of the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. Pain tore at her heart. The city no longer felt like home. She would leave, she decided, just as soon as she could figure out the logistics. At the hotel, she checked in under her maiden name, Carter, not wanting to be recognized. Luckily, the receptionist didn't press her for details. Once in her suite, Adele collapsed on the bed, sobbing until her body felt hollow. She touched her belly. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to her unborn child. "I wanted to give you a happy family." Her tears resumed, unstoppable. Hours later, she woke to the faint glow of morning. She'd barely slept, her eyes puffy, mind in turmoil. Her phone showed dozens of missed calls and messages from Daniel. She deleted them all without reading, then powered off the device. She stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. A pale, shaken woman stared back. She had once been strong, independent. She needed that strength now more than ever. Determination kindled in her chest. She would not let Daniel's betrayal define her future. She would not remain a victim. She would walk away, just as she had said, and she would start a new life for herself and her baby. Over the next few days, Adele quietly slipped out of the city. She bought a last-minute plane ticket to her hometown in Seattle, where her parents still lived in the cozy house she grew up in. She had told them nothing yet, only that she was coming home for a visit. She couldn't bear to reveal the truth until she saw them in person. She left behind the fancy clothes Daniel had bought her, choosing instead a simple hoodie and jeans. She wore a hat to remain inconspicuous, though she doubted the paparazzi were searching for her. They would soon learn about the wedding fiasco, no doubt, but for now, she was still anonymous enough to move undetected. The flight to Seattle was tense and emotional. She kept replaying Daniel's confession. Every memory of their relationship felt tainted now. She wanted to hate him, but her heart still beat with sorrowful longing for the man she thought he was. She was also furious with Christine, the woman who had callously shown up at their wedding, the woman who might even carry his child. It was all too much to bear. When she landed, her father, Robert Carter, picked her up at the airport. He was all smiles initially, hugging her tight. "Where's Daniel?" he asked, noticing her lack of luggage. Adele swallowed back tears. "Dad, can we talk at home?" Concern flickered in his eyes. "Of course, sweetheart." The ride to the old house was quiet, broken only by her father's gentle attempts to ask if everything was all right. She only said she needed time. Once they arrived, her mother, Harriet, rushed out to greet her, arms wide. "Adele, my beautiful bride, I thought you were on your honeymoon. Did something happen?" Adele collapsed into her mother's arms, unable to hold back her sobs. Over the next hour, amid cups of hot tea and a box of tissues, she poured out the entire story. Harriet and Robert listened in stunned silence. When she finished, Harriet held her trembling hand, tears in her own eyes. Robert stood abruptly, and paced the living room, anger clear in his tight jaw. That man, he lied to you. This can't stand. Harriet turned to him. Please, calm down for Adele's sake. Her eyes returned to Adele, brimming with sympathy. Oh, my poor darling, I'm so sorry. Adele sniffled, wiping her nose. I feel like such a fool. I believed everything he said. But maybe I should have seen the signs. Harriet shook her head. Don't blame yourself. It's his deception, not your naivety. Adele felt exhausted, but also relieved to have told them. She lay on the couch, mother stroking her hair. I need some time to figure out what to do next, Adele murmured. I want a divorce, but I'm not sure how complicated it'll be. We only just got married. Robert turned from his pacing. I'll make some calls. We'll get the best lawyer. You're not alone in this, Adele. We'll make sure you and your baby are protected. She closed her eyes, tears slipping out again. Thank you, she whispered, feeling a surge of gratitude for her parents' unwavering love. Days turned into weeks. Adele ignored Daniel's attempts to contact her. He sent emails pleading for forgiveness, left voicemails claiming that Christine meant nothing, that he was manipulated. He even flew to Seattle, apparently trying to see her, but she refused. She wanted no part of his explanation. The sight of him would break her heart all over again. She focused on her pregnancy, visiting her old OB-GYN, ensuring the baby was healthy. The doctor noted that Adele's stress level was concerning, but physically she was doing fine. Harriet accompanied her to every appointment, holding her hand and offering comfort. Meanwhile, Robert met with a top divorce attorney, Catherine Winston, who specialized in high-profile cases. She assured them that since the marriage was so recent and given the circumstances, Adele had a strong case. She could seek an annulment or a divorce, whichever route proved more beneficial. The prospect of a lengthy legal battle loomed, but Catherine was confident they could secure a fair settlement for Adele and her child. One chilly afternoon, Adele was out on the porch, sipping hot cocoa, when she saw a luxury car pull up outside. Her heart hammered as Daniel stepped out, looking disheveled in a way she'd never seen before, his usually perfect hair unkempt, his tailored suit wrinkled. He glanced up and saw her, relief flashing in his eyes. She stood, arms folded protectively around herself, bracing for confrontation. Daniel approached the picket fence, not daring to enter without permission. Adele, please, he said, voice raspy. I just want to talk. She set her jaw, gripping the porch railing. Leave, Daniel. I have nothing to say to you. He looked broken, dark circles under his eyes. I did a terrible thing. I know you hate me, but I want you to know I've ended it with Christine for good. She was blackmailing me about some business dealings, but I've come clean to my father, to our board. They're handling her. She can't hurt us anymore. Adele's heart twisted. You still don't get it. It's not just about her blackmail. You cheated on me. You betrayed my trust, my love. He swallowed hard. I know, and I can never undo that. But please, let me prove I'm committed to you and our child. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll sign anything, give you anything. Just give me another chance. Her voice trembled with fury and pain. You think you can buy me off? Make me forget you slept with someone else while I was pregnant with your baby? He shook his head fervently. No, it's not like that. I love you, Adele. I do. I was a coward. I was afraid of losing my inheritance. That's the truth. But now I see how meaningless it all is without you. I'm sorry. She stared at him, tears forming. Part of her wanted to believe him, to fall into his arms. But she remembered Christine's scornful voice, the heartbreak, the lies. Daniel, you made your bed. Now lie in it. I'm filing for divorce. I never want to see you again. His face crumpled. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "I was going to give this to you on our honeymoon," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate diamond necklace. "It belonged to my grandmother. I wanted you to have it as a symbol of my commitment." Her lip trembled. "Stop," she said, voice cracking. "I don't want your jewelry or your apologies." He nodded slowly, tears glistening in his own eyes. "All right," he whispered, "if that's what you really want." She forced herself to remain stiff, to not break. "Leave, Daniel. Don't come back." Tears slipped down his cheeks. He turned, shoulders slumped, and walked away. Adele stumbled inside, heart pounding. The moment she shut the door, she collapsed, sobbing, Harriet rushing to hold her. In the following weeks, Adele worked closely with Catherine Winston to finalize divorce proceedings. Daniel's lawyers attempted to negotiate, offering generous settlements, but Adele only wanted her freedom. She refused to be tied to him or his money. She demanded primary custody of the child, minimal financial support, and a quick, clean break. Surprisingly, Daniel complied. Word reached Adele that Christine's blackmail scheme had exploded, causing scandal in the Harrison empire. Daniel's father, Jonathan, was furious but stood by his son publicly, paying off certain parties to minimize the damage. Christine vanished from the public eye, and rumors swirled that she was pregnant. Adele tried not to dwell on it. It was no longer her concern. Soon enough, the official papers were signed. Just weeks after her fairy tale wedding, Adele Carter reclaimed her maiden name. The marriage was dissolved. She felt a mixture of relief and profound sadness. Relief that she was free from a web of lies. Sadness for the dream that had died. Despite the heartbreak, Adele discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She decided to stay in Seattle, to raise her child surrounded by family and the familiarity of home. She applied for a remote position with a non-profit she believed in, determined to carve out an independent path. She would build a life where her child was loved, safe, and far from Daniel's toxic circle. One sunny afternoon, she visited a quiet beach on Puget Sound, gazing over the still waters. She placed a hand on her growing belly. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her unborn baby. "I promise. I'll give you all the love you need." A sense of calm settled on her, the promise of a new beginning. Months later, Adele was flourishing. She had found a small but charming apartment in downtown Seattle, not far from her parents, and nested it with soft colors and warm touches. She learned how to manage her stress, focusing on her pregnancy and new job. The tabloids had moved on to the next scandal, leaving her mostly in peace. Daniel sent occasional messages, gentle, cautious check-ins about the baby's health. Adele never replied, but she read them, sensing genuine remorse in his words. She no longer felt the razor-sharp sting of his betrayal. She had closed that chapter, determined to protect herself and her child. Her water broke on a stormy November evening. Robert and Harriet rushed her to the hospital, where she labored through the night. As dawn broke, Adele gave birth to a healthy baby boy. He had her eyes, dark and curious, and a soft tuft of hair. Cradling him in her arms, tears of love and relief streamed down her cheeks. She named him Oliver Carter, honoring her family's name. She felt an overwhelming surge of devotion. This little life was her new beginning. She vowed to guard him from life's cruelties, to raise him with honesty and kindness. She never told Daniel about Oliver's birth until a week later, when she finally sent him a short message. "Your son arrived safely. His name is Oliver. He's healthy and beautiful." She attached a single photo of the tiny infant in her arms. Then she turned off her phone, cradling Oliver against her heart. No matter what storms they might face in the future, Adele knew she had the strength to endure. She had walked away from betrayal on what should have been the happiest night of her life, but she emerged more resilient than ever. Though the wedding night had been a nightmare, it also led her to a deeper love, the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Thank you for joining me on this roller coaster of love, betrayal, and ultimate resilience. Adele Carter's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes our greatest heartbreaks clear the way for our greatest triumphs. When the fairy tale wedding shatters, it's the strength of one's own heart that lights the path forward. Adele refused to settle for half-truths and manipulations, choosing instead to stand on her own 2 feet for the sake of herself and her child. No matter how devastating the betrayal, hope can still be found on the other side of pain. If Adele's journey moved you, please don't forget to like this video and share it with anyone who might find hope or inspiration in her story. And of course, subscribe to our channel for more engaging, dramatic tales just like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.